You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting The Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
One of the things that we get to do here on the Coffee Hour is check in with our missionaries. Quite often that's during a reconnect when they're back at the International Center and we get to talk with them in person. But thanks to technology, we get to check in with them in the field as well. And so spending some time this week and in the days ahead, checking in with our missionaries in the field to see how they're doing and how life is going in their part of the world in light of the current circumstances with the global pandemic. Joining us today is the Reverend James Sharp, serving the Lord in Uruguay. Pastor Sharp, thanks for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today.
It's a pleasure.
Tell us about the work that you've been given to do in Uruguay.
My wife and I both have calls. My wife is a roster teacher, and she focuses on educational and children's ministry, both in our school. We have a Lutheran school here, and in the church, training teachers both for the day school and for the educational ministries of the congregation and missions. I'm a church planner, and so I'm planning a church in downtown Montevideo, and I also am doing like theological education, trying to raise up and identify leaders for the Lutheran Church of Uruguay.
So now with all of the work that you've been doing and now this global pandemic, how has coronavirus, this pandemic, all of these life upheaving things happening, how have they affected the work that you and your wife are doing in Uruguay?
Well, a lot of our work, especially my wife's work, is centered around the school. Like I said, we have a very large Lutheran school that's connected to the main congregation here, and a lot of the work of the congregation is connected to that school. And as soon as Uruguay confirmed its first cases of coronavirus on, I think it was the 13th of March, the next day the government suspended classes for 2 weeks. And then they've since extended that. And so our kids have been out of school since March 15th or 16th, whatever day the Monday was. And so the school has been closed. And that's affected a lot of our ministries that are focused towards the school because those kids aren't there and the parents aren't dropping their kids off and things like that. For my mission, we decided immediately, the government hadn't banned any sort of gatherings or anything. Their first step was just to close the schools. But we decided that if they were closing the school and we have churches that have our worship services at the school, that we should obey the government's desire. And so we started having online only services that weekend. And in my mission, especially downtown, the people are coming from all over the Montevideo area. And so we decided very quickly that we would have to cancel all of our activities until further notice. So we have not been having those get-togethers downtown because it would be particularly bad to have people coming from different parts and then going back to different parts of the area. So it's really put a damper on our activities, the Bible studies and the educational classes and things that we've been doing.
Tell us about the partners that you work with in your mission.
We have the school, which is a main partner, and has allowed us to generate contacts. And it's really, I think people in St. Louis probably understand how private schools are a big thing, right? And how when the schools have the day off, the traffic is much better and stuff like that. There's just not so much movement. It's very similar here in Montevideo. It's amazing when the kids are off of school, even if it's a normal work day. It really cuts down the traffic. And so our school is a major driver of contacts that we follow. We have connections for that all over Montevideo. And so not having that daily contact with those folks has impacted us a great deal. So what we've done is we've moved, like many people, to more of an online model, and we're having youth group and catechesis and Bible studies and worship services online. And our partners are helping us with that, both the school, and we have a local office of Lutheran Hour Ministries, which is called Christ for All the Nations in Spanish, Cristo para todas las naciones. And they have been helping us with some of the online material because it really wasn't any of the pastors' forte, I guess, is the best way to say it. And so they've been a great partner working with us. So that's our team here is the church, the school, and Lutheran Hour Ministries.
Tell us more about, with social distancing, how are you able to connect with the local community? I would imagine local community life is probably a chief part of what you do. You mentioned, the school being a chief part of that. So mainly, it sounds like, much like the U.S., the main connection with the local community is primarily through online or virtual opportunities. Are there other ways that you're able to engage with the community?
Yeah, one of the things we've started doing, well, immediately we were calling, just phone calls. We've been constantly calling our members, especially our elderly members, to check up on them, to make sure that they're doing okay, to make sure that they have everything that they need. And one of our workers, one of the lay workers on our team, a member named Fernando, has been going and getting groceries and picking up medicines and stuff like that for the members of the mission, especially downtown where he works with me. And then this past week, we started doing like food baskets, basically, for some of the members that are really hit financially by not being able to work. After the schools were closed, the next step was a lot of restaurants began to close. And so there's what they call an informal economy here in Uruguay. There's a lot of people that kind of work around the edges, and they park cars and they do deliveries just for, spare change and tips and stuff like that. And we have quite a few people who are in those conditions that participate in our missions. And when there's no one on the street, they are, these are people that are really living on the margins to begin with. They're in particular danger. So we've been organizing a collection of cash, and then going out and buying essentials and getting it to people, and trying to do the distribution in a social distancing sort of way, which is not always the easiest thing to do, but making sure that we're disinfecting everything and washing our hands and using hand sanitizer and things like that. But it's allowed us to continue to serve people, and then to kind of expand that circle a little bit, as well as people who need help look to the church for help. We've been able to connect with people who are outside the church as well through that.
That's fantastic. How has this all affected your family life, your life at home with your wife? How has your family life itself been affected by all of this?
Well, we have 4 kids, so we're not social distancing at home, that's for sure. And we have we're getting ready to move, in theory. We don't know when that's going to happen, and our landlady has been very kind to let us continue where we currently are, because there are no mover trucks working and stuff like that. So we're still in our house, and we actually have the vicar from the seminary in Brazil who is living with us as well. So there's 7 of us at home. And it's it's fun. The kids are doing work. At first, the first few days of the school break, they were not doing anything. It was just like vacation, right? But then the school started first to distribute work to do, and then return via email. And then this past week, they've moved to some online formats that they're using. And so the kids have school. It's I said we have 2 jobs, 3 computers, and 4 kids in school, all of whom want are supposed to be doing 3 or 4 hours per day of video conferencing, and we have a million video conferences and Zooms and Skypes with different places and people. So the jockeying for screen space for these things has gotten exciting. But we live in a little apartment complex, and there's a little garden out back, and so the kids can at least get outside and run around and stuff like that. So it hasn't been unlivable by any stretch of imagination, but my kids have not been out of the house or out of our yard since March 13th. So it's eventually they're going to go insane, but for now they're doing pretty well.
The question is, who will first, the kids or parents, is the question.
Well, I don't think there's any question about that. Notice I didn't talk about my wife or my going insane.
How can we pray for you? How can our listeners pray for you and support you in the days ahead?
Just pray, obviously, that this pandemic in God's mercy would come to an end and that we can return to our normal ministry. Pray that our digital outreach continues to reach people. We've seen a lot of people that don't go to church commenting on our Facebook page. A friend of mine who is an atheist and I have invited to church probably hundreds of times, watched our service last weekend and commented on my sermon, which he never would set foot in a church. And so it's not ideal, but the Lord has his way of using these things to maybe reach people that we weren't reaching before. So we're praying that would happen, that somehow in the midst of this pandemic and the panic and the social distancing and all the troubles, that we would reach people that haven't been reached with the gospel.
Wow. Thanks be to God. Well, thank you so much. The Reverend James Sharp and Angela Sharp serve the Lord in Uruguay. Thank you so much, Pastor Sharp, for joining us on the Coffee Hour today.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.